All right then. Hello everyone. We are delighted to have our guest speaker Pamela Patterson today with us. I would like to welcome her and you all on behalf of IIBA Vancouver chapter for today's speaker session. The topic today will be how to silence stakeholders when you need to and how to make them talk when it matters. Please expect the session to last until 7:30 p.m.-ish, leaving us some time for Q&A activities at the end. And if you have any questions throughout the session, please leave them in the chat as we go. Right. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Pequot First Nation, Kwantlen, Kitsi, Semiahmoo, Swasins First Nations, Quiklam, and Stalo Nation. We thank them for allowing us to meet and learn together on their territory. Right. Please mute your devices as we are recording the event if you aren't speaking. We encourage you to also turn on your camera so we can all see your wonderful faces. We don't want this to feel like a boring Zoom webinar. So get your backgrounds ready and yeah, let's see everyone. And now I'd like to invite IIBA Vancouver chapter's very own president, Sid Arya, to give a welcome message.
Thank you. Welcome to the IIBA Vancouver chapter event. I'm thrilled to definitely see a few faces that I know from previous sessions and whatnot. And certainly would have expected a lot more people to show up. However, I do understand this is as well our, first session after we are resuming back in after the summer break. So certainly look forward to the people who are there and certainly for people to join in as the session progresses. I'd like to, also start by thanking our sponsors. Your support makes it possible for us to host events like this and foster a community where businesses, with business analysis can thrive. And also would like to thank our amazing volunteers. Your dedication and hard work behind the scenes truly makes a difference. And we certainly couldn't have made possible any of these events as such. Now, on to the topic that is being presented. I thank Pamela for taking the time to be with us today and join us from Ontario. So her topic is how to silence stakeholders when you need it and make them talk when it matters. And as business analysts, we often find ourselves navigating the complex waters of stakeholder engagement. And at times we may need to quiet the noise to focus on critical issues, while at other moments we need to encourage the other voices to share insights and that can shape our projects. So I'm excited for our speaker tonight, who will delve deeper into these concepts and provide us with practical strategies, I hope. And let's embrace this opportunity to learn from their expertise and enhance our skills in stakeholder engagement. Thank you all for being here, and let's have a fantastic evening. Back to you, Edit. You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you so much for that, Sid. I would like to move on to a little bit about our chapter. We're not just some ordinary chapter. In the last 4 years, we've won 2 awards, the 2020 Professional Development Award and the 2022 Chapter Sustainability Award. I would like to thank all of our members, speakers, board members, sponsors, and volunteers alike for making this awards possible. It requires a lot of hard work, dedication, and time. So we really appreciate everyone involved in helping us achieve these. Thank you all. And our chapter mission and vision. Our vision is to lead BA practitioners in mainland BC. And we aim to do so by promoting value and awareness around the BA profession. We aim to facilitate professional development by providing access to forums, discussion groups, study sessions, webinars, speaker presentations, and workshops. We also try to support BA practitioners with IIBA certifications by providing access to information and training programs relating to business analysis body of knowledge. And lastly, we want to build and engage the community by encouraging knowledge sharing through networking and social events. I'll share more on social events towards the end of the session. And I would like to ask you all to make sure to check out the IIBA Vancouver chapter YouTube channel, as all past recordings, this event, and future recordings will be on that channel. I believe Kathy shall be dropping a link in the chat box for everyone. And we also have a LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook by the tag IIBA Vancouver chapter. So please check out all our social media. And again, as I said, I'd like to thank our sponsors. If there's anyone from UBC Sauder School of Business who is here today and would like to say a few words, now would be the chance I invite them to speak. No? All right. And if there's anyone from SFU who would like to speak, I invite them to do so. That's okay. We're very grateful for our sponsors as they make these events possible. And now we got that out of the way, let's move into a very brief synopsis of today's meeting. Navigating stakeholder communication is a very critical skill in IT, but yet it's very difficult and often feels like walking a tightrope. Striking the perfect balance between encouraging stakeholders to share insights in a positive way and ensuring they don't overwhelm you while doing so is often a very nuanced challenge. So in today's session, we're going to be finding actionable techniques and insights tailored for software projects aiming to optimize stakeholder interactions. This session will cover how to create a structured communication flow that encourages productive input without letting discussions spiral out of control. Key topics include techniques for eliciting timely and relevant stakeholder feedback. And about our wonderful speaker, Pamela, she has a track record of providing strategic systems analysis advice, and her focus is on delivering quality-oriented requirements, processes, and other IT artifacts for enterprise IT projects, including those valued up to $2 billion. As an IIBA-certified Senior Business Systems Analysis and PMP-certified Project Manager, her proficiency encompasses agile and waterfall methodologies and ensuring project alignment with organizational goals. Beyond analytical roles, she is an international keynote speaker and best-selling author who engages audiences on diverse platforms, sharing insights from her industry experience. Her publications include a perspective book on stakeholder interviewing and public speaking at global conferences. These reflect her commitment to empowering professionals with knowledge and effective communication skills in BA and project management. And now I'd like to turn it over to Pamela to take it from here.
Thank you, Edith, for that wonderful introduction. And it's very nice to join you in Vancouver, albeit remotely. And I do work in IT, but these concepts that I'm about to talk about, they don't just belong in IT, obviously. But I'm interested in knowing, for people, we have a nice intimate group tonight, which is fantastic because I get to know you a lot better than some other larger occasions. And I'd love to know two things. I'd love to know where you're coming in from, if you're in the Vancouver area or somewhere else. I'm in Kingston, Ontario. And I'd also like to know what industry you work in. What kind of job do you do? Are you a BA in insurance? Are you a BA in the government? If you could just put that in the chat, and I'll see if I can bring up my chat, actually. Yeah, where's everybody coming in from? Vancouver, BA in insurance. Okay, so that was a good guess to start us off. Thank you, Palav. Who else were you coming in from? IT director from Seattle. Welcome. Vancouver, IT in a not-for-profit. Okay, that's different. I worked for a not-for-profit, a few of them. I've worked for Red Cross. I've worked for Pharmacy Examining Board of Canada. Vancouver, Client Services. Thank you, And Kathy, nice to see you, Kathy. IT, healthcare, insurance. A big need for BAs there. And Elvis, searching for my first BA role in Canada. So Elvis, I wrote a book. It's called Get the Job, and it's actually available for free. I'm not trying to sell any books tonight. It's actually available for free if you're a Kindle Unlimited member, and it's a #1 international bestseller. So check that out. It's all about how to get through the HR bots, which is very difficult to do. Unless you know the tricks. I mean, I've seen the inside of these systems, the guts, and so I know all the tricks, but it's worth checking out, and it's free. You can also ask for it in your library, your local library, and they'll bring it in for you. Who else? Do we have everybody? Is there? I think there's a few more people. We don't know where you're from and what industry you're in. I'll put the title in the chat here. I'm not hard to find.
I would encourage everyone to participate here. There's only a few of us. Add it as well. You can put your whereabouts as well.
Yeah, please do. I mean, I'd love to know where you're all from. So some people from IT, some people in nonprofit, searching for the first BA role. So Elvis, you're going to get a lot out of tonight, I think, and for a variety of roles. So that's fantastic. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. And if you have any questions, I mean, I really want this to be a very dynamic session. If you have any questions, any comments, just please put them in the chat. In my view, unfortunately, I won't be able to see the chat, but I'm going to have some handy helpers here who are going to help me see what's in the chat. So please jump in.
Sorry, yeah, I'll be monitoring the chat throughout. So if you have any questions, leave them there and I'll let her know so we can answer them along the way.
Okay. Thanks, Adit. And just jump in. Whenever there's a comment or a question, then jump in. So this session is about how to silence your stakeholders and make them talk when you need them to. And this is not something that we often talk about, is it? Silencing your stakeholders, because we're so dependent on our stakeholders for information. It's about everything that we do. It comes from our stakeholders initially. And then we refine it. We're doing requirements and process flows, and we're doing all kinds of things. But it's not something intuitive that we would like to think about. And it's more about maybe managing the classroom with, if you know some teaching techniques, it's a very, very good thing to do. And you can get more mileage out of your sessions, okay? And also making them talk when you need to. We're going to talk about some very specific techniques about how to do that. So I have a background in journalism, chemistry, and engineering, a Bachelor of Journalism. And this is where I learned a lot of these techniques, was actually bringing them over from the journalistic discipline. And journalists are very, very good navigating stakeholders. They're very good at getting information out of stakeholders. One very, very quick tip that I learned a long time ago was that when you are in a journalistic interview and your stakeholder who you're interviewing sees you writing things down, it's important. Well, when the interviewer has had enough information, or they're not interested, or the stakeholder is getting off topic, they put their pen down and they stop writing and they put their paper down. So it's a very strong nonverbal technique that journalists have developed. And so I originally worked in communications and public relations, and I prepared stakeholders for national interviews for the CBC and the Globe and Mail. And that was before I became a BA. But then I brought these techniques over into business analysis, and they've proven to be very helpful. We're going to talk about some of that tonight. I also have a master's degree in chemistry, and a master's in IT with a systems engineering specialty. I also taught college for many years in project management. I did that. So I also have a new book coming out that's in 2025 about interviewing stakeholders, published by the International Institute of Business Analysis. So look for that when that comes. Navigating stakeholder communication, critical skill, but it often feels like a tightrope because sometimes they don't talk enough. Sometimes they talk too much. And striking that perfect balance between encouraging stakeholders to share their insights when needed and ensuring that they don't overwhelm the process at other times is a nuanced challenge, isn't it? Because we need them. And they are really two polar opposites of the same problem. And there might very well be some logical reasons why stakeholders don't talk enough or talk too much. Honestly, right? There's logical reasons for it. Most people are trying to do their job in the best way possible, and there might be communication differences, cultural differences, emotional kind of reasons like nervousness and being intimidated. Maybe it's their first interview, or maybe it's the first time that they're interviewing, holding a workshop. So that plays into somebody's comfort level. Personality reasons, or really just having a bad day. Haven't we all had bad days? Okay. So whatever the reason, it actually doesn't even really matter. What matters is that we can manage these stakeholders in our meetings and get the information that we need, regardless of the reason. There's a lot that you can do. We're going to dive into that. Now, the question might be, what do we do? Because we need this information from our stakeholders, and we're always running out of time. We need to manage different personalities in our meetings. We are faced with pressures of deadlines. We have stakeholders who are multitasking in our meetings all the time because they have pressures of deadlines. So what do we do? I'm going to show you 5 different ways to manage stakeholders. Number 1 is to set the mood and the tone. If you're going to have a long, casual conversation or a short, fast meeting, set the tone. Use word cues and tone of voice. So here's 2 different examples for you. We have a lot to go through today, so let's get started. Or we're going to start this topic, have some preliminary discussions, and we'll likely have a few more meetings in the future. 2 different ways of starting off your meetings and setting the tone. And people feel that tone. And it's almost like managing a classroom, managing an audience. They feel that tone and they react to it, and it provides them a framework for the meeting. Okay? Very, very helpful for you to think about your word cues and tone of voice. Saying that you are, we've got a lot to go through, let's get started. It kind of like sets the tone. Okay, no more chit chat. We're going to dive in. But if we say, we'll likely have a few more meetings in the future, it also provides the cue right away to your group of stakeholders that this is a big topic. And so don't worry if we don't rush through it. Don't worry if we don't get through it all. Okay? So using word cues and tone of voice helps to set expectations for your stakeholders in advance. And so does a happy demeanor like these people here. Because we do set the tone. When we are facilitating, when we are leading the meeting, we set the tone. And so we need to be mindful of ourselves and how we appear to other people. Are we open, smiling, engaging? I mean, if we walked into the room and saw this face, you'd have a different tone, mood, and mindset than if you saw this group of people, right? So that's another thing, nonverbal, that sets the mood and tone. and creates trust and openness the minute that people come into the room. Stakeholders would feel comfortable to talk about their needs with them. Okay, we set the tone. If stakeholders are feeling comfortable with us, they feel open, there's the beginning of trust, the beginning of the relationship, and that's how we get our information, with rapport. But it starts with tone. Okay. Any comments about that? Mood and tone. You can come off mic as well.
Yeah, I think it has become a bit difficult after COVID, right? We are not seeing people in person, and it has become a little challenging.
It is challenging, and you know, it's interesting because I used to give webinars about doing work remotely, and then it became so mainstream that I stopped doing those webinars. And people thought of the remote work and being on Zoom as another form of being in person. And I'm not quite sure I agree with that, but it is getting to be more so like that. And there's other techniques that you can use when you are working remotely that I mean, I'd be happy to come back and talk about. But it is an interesting quandary for sure. What are you finding are some main kind of stumbling areas or challenges?
I think you don't see people's reactions, right? How they are reacting to what you are saying, or even if they are listening properly. Yeah, I mean, those are the main things I would say.
Especially with the camera off.
Yeah.
And having the camera off. I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Sid, your camera's off.
Oh,
You know, that's interesting because there are techniques that you can use for elicitation to invite their participation. And one of them is just saying their name. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the simplest thing at all. And just when you have questions and it's not to surprise them, but it's to use their name at the beginning of the preamble. So Sid, for this next segment, I'm going to heavily lean on your input about requirements. Is that okay? And then Sid has to, you know, if Sid is busy and the dog is barking or something, Sid has to come back into the meeting and have that interaction. Using their name, it helps a lot. We're actually going to get into some of those challenges and some solutions around that. But it's a good question. Anybody else? No? Okay. So number 2 is about structuring smartly. It's about structuring our communication to our stakeholders, to verbally and visually guide them in the direction that we want. Okay? Very, very good technique. Part of the reason stakeholders don't talk enough or talk too much is that the meetings are not structured enough. So let's take a look at this. What does this mean? For example, we can do a basic agenda that just has the high-level items, and that's the beginning of some structure. And we send that out in advance. It's going to help guide the stakeholders to think about what we're going to discuss. Okay? Or if we think we might run out of time with this particular group of stakeholders because we know them, we can do a time-boxed agenda where the time for each agenda item is very clear. And this allows stakeholders to know that we don't have 2 hours to discuss business needs, and they can prepare for that mentally. It shapes how they think about the content and the discussion. So this is really guiding them in the way that we need to. We can also add their name to the agenda item. Who will be responsible for talking about that item? So adding their name to the agenda provides even further structure. And when you send the agenda in advance, your stakeholders can definitively prepare for their items in advance. So they're not caught off guard in the meeting with nothing to say. because that's one of the themes of tonight, how to make them talk and how to silence them. You're enabling them to prepare, which is fantastic. Even before your meeting begins, your meeting is off to a good start. The other advantage to providing an agenda like this one is for all of the multitaskers, okay? And that's all of us, so that they know when they need to insert themselves into the discussion. They'll get ready. You can also add the detail of each agenda item, and this forms constraints around the conversation. And in business analysis, constraints is one of our key terms. It's one of our keywords that we use all the time, and it impacts our approach to the project. Constraints. So in the introduction, on this example here, we wouldn't have known what was included in the introduction. But now we know it's our name, our role, and department. And that's it. It's not thoughts about the project. It's not if we like it. It's not about soccer. That's it. Because some meetings do have icebreakers where they want to know about you. They want to know about your hobbies, and it's a team building event. But this agenda, that's it. Your name, role, and department. So it helps guide the conversation and keep us on track. Business needs. We know we're creating business needs for accounting, logistics, and leadership. No other departments. That's it. That's our scope, right? And functional requirements. We know it's only for the accounting area, not even logistics or leadership. So the meeting will not get derailed into talking about other items. And if it does, we come back to our agenda. And the trick is to get consent about the agenda, right? It's to say, are there any other agenda items that we need to discuss today? And if everybody says, well, no, that looks good, they've given you permission to get the meeting back on track if you get derailed. And the wrap up, it could be interpreted differently, but because it's specified, we know it's about the conclusion and the next steps, not just a summary. Okay? So these different kinds of styles of agenda creates a different mood and tone in the meeting. The more specific you get, like this one, the more it creates constraints over the freedom of discussion. Sometimes you want this, like when you have meetings that get derailed and go down the rabbit hole, and sometimes you don't. Other times you want a very loose agenda that is more organic and free form. So for example, when you're meeting stakeholders for the first time, or you're trying to develop a relationship, you don't want your meeting to be time boxed or so constrained because it impacts the flow of the meeting and to naturally grow that relationship. You really can't develop a relationship on a stopwatch. So maybe a looser agenda would allow that kind of free flow, allow you to get to know each other and develop that relationship. So what is the purpose of your meeting? And structure it decisively based on the objectives and the stakeholder needs. Okay? Does anybody use agendas in this way? Having different kinds of agenda types depending on the meeting and what you want to get out of it?
Yes, ma'am. I have all of these. I've got a question for you, Pam. So, may I?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah. So I was just going to ask you, like, have you used success criteria? Let's say if you were doing a meeting that ran through, or was a series of workshops which had a number of meetings, and did it include like the success criteria for the day, or for the set of workshops or set of meetings that were there?
I really like that idea. I think that's a very good, and I think you have to be careful about where you use it, because we don't want to tell our team that they're not successful. But I think it's an interesting idea. And have you used it?
I have actually used it multiple times, and more recently, just last week at one of the workshops that I hosted, which was over a period of 3 days. And I wanted the success criteria for each day known in advance.
Mm-hmm.
because we were bringing in different stakeholders, some VP level, some directors, some worker bees, for lack of better word. So just wanted it to be known on what the success at the end of the day would look like. And then, in terms of report out for the day, tie it back to the success criteria, just so that we knew that we had achieved the goals that we set out for the workshop for the day, sort of thing.
I think that's terrific. Yeah, that's really good. Any other comments?
Yeah, another thing I do sometimes is, if I know that the meeting will turn into, a series of another meetings because the topic is bigger. So the last section that I would keep is normally around the next steps, and we will probably talk around 5 minutes on the next step. So that's another thing I do.
I love that. So you're connecting one meeting
Yeah.
to another, and you're setting up that expectation for meeting again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic.
Sorry, one other thing to add there, Pam, just on the topic that Pallav brought up. What I've used in the past is to set the agenda for the next meeting if it was a recurring one, rather than people having to take away a homework, work on the agenda for the next meeting together and agree what those topics might be, and then set that up as the agenda for the next meeting in that meeting.
I love that idea. It's a very good team thing to do and very collaborative. So I'm going to guess that you have really successful meetings, Sid.
I want to say yes.
Yes. Yes, I think so. Thank you for that. So functional requirement change. Let's take a look at this. Right now, users can register for the lottery app using email and password, but in the future, we want users to be able to register using email and password, and also with biometric authentication, fingerprint, and facial recognition for added security. So there's actually really nothing wrong with this requirement, and it's actually a change, but there's really nothing wrong with it. Well, the problem is you need to read every single word to understand it. And as we know, people don't like to read anymore. And it's very difficult to get people's eye time. So what if we could structure this where we could remove words, speed up the reading, and increase comprehension, thus reducing the risk in the process? Because when you think of your information lifecycle requirements, the entire lifecycle from elicitation and all of the reviews, documenting all the reviews and to approval, and then even after that, when these requirements are used elsewhere, that entire cycle again, that's a lot of eye time, okay? A lot of time spent. So wouldn't it be great if we could reduce the risk of misunderstanding, of missing gaps in the logic and the requirement, because there's too many words squished together and people don't like to read? What if there was an easy way to do that? And continuing on our theme here, we can do it through structure. So take a look at the requirement now. The only thing I did was separate it into current state and future state. The only thing I did. And notice how much easier it is to read, or to scan, actually. So let's take it one step further. Now I remove some words that I didn't need that don't affect the meaning, okay? And I actually do take requirements in requirements workshops. I actually do take notes in this format or in another format that lends itself to the meeting, because it's easy to populate. And it allows eyes to go in the right direction. So I delete words that don't affect the meaning. And now our requirement looks like this. Users shall register using email and password. Future state, users shall also register using biometric authentication, fingerprint, or facial recognition. So easy to read and understand through structure. When something is easy and fast to understand, we have increased our ability to understand and be understood. And we have also shortened that entire end-to-end information lifecycle, which over time could actually save us thousands and thousands of hours just through some structure. So think about that. If you have a team of 10 reviewers, you have 1,000 requirements, you save a few minutes on every requirement, you really save thousands of hours on your projects over time. So if you're looking for a way to direct stakeholder input better and manage stakeholder conversations, think about structure. So number 3 is be visual. We see a lot of webinars lately on being visual, but what does this actually mean within our context? We learn different ways. Some people learn by listening, by talking. Other people, they see something visually. So some people learn by reading. I learn by visually and reading, not so much by listening. I'm curious, does anybody know their learning style? How they best absorb information? Verbally, visually, kinesthetically? That's the smallest category of all. Yeah. Sid?
I was gonna say, don't like learning. Is that an option?
Don't like learning. What if you're learning about something that you like?
I was just joking. Visual, I think, is for me.
Visual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who else?
I agree with Sid. I think visual learning's the best for me because it's quite easy when you can see something. It's much simpler to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I think visual sort of reinforces. I like to actually listen, but I like visual to reinforce whatever I'm learning.
Yeah. Yeah, learning by listening. That's good if you can do it, because that's that's how most communication is. It's verbal. Yeah, but good for you. You can see here that there is, in terms of how people absorb information, there's different theories about this. There's a lot of discussion around it, but generally visual is the highest category in terms of how people absorb information, and then verbal, and then kinesthetic. So kinesthetic people learn by doing, and we can interact best with them by marking things up, by having some action, by taking notes, or they take notes on the board. Any kind of action involved is in how they learn. There's one kinesthetic person who told me, if I don't get a chance to do something, I fall asleep in meetings. So that's a very interesting thing. But most people, visual and verbal. And your stakeholders could be strong in one way, weak in another. And why does this matter? Well, if they don't absorb our information, that we're talking about requirements, we're talking about process maps, we're talking about a project, then we're not going to get very far. I mean, that just makes sense. So if a stakeholder absorbs information visually, like me and some other people on the call, but all you do is 100% talking in your meetings without any PowerPoint or something to look at, they might absorb very little of what you say. Okay? So when it comes time to ask them to do a task, they may not even have absorbed what you said in the first place and do it the wrong way or not at all, because they get confused, nervous maybe, or just didn't even receive the information. They just didn't fully understand. So what can we do about this? Use visual and verbal communication for everything that you do. When you have a meeting, have verbal and visual. And we always have verbal anyway, don't we? So now it's just about ensuring the visuals. And I know it doesn't quite address kinesthetic, but verbal and visual together get about 95% of people, how they absorb information. So visual can be anything. Process maps, very simple one here. You sharing your screen, and showing requirements in Excel or DevOps. Okay. You taking notes on screen. You don't need to do a PowerPoint for everything. Taking notes on the screen keeps them engaged, focused, gives them something for their eyes to do. And then they can also see, by watching you take notes, they can see if you've caught up to them verbally. See if they're talking too fast or too much. They can see that you haven't caught up to them on the note side. And this is a very good nonverbal way of managing the pace and flow of conversation. There's been a number of times where I've been taking notes and I show them on the screen, and my stakeholders, maybe there's 10 of them in the meeting, and they're having a lot of tossing the conversation ball back and forth, and they can clearly see that I haven't caught up. So it's a very, and they stop themselves. So it's a very good nonverbal way to manage stakeholders. Prompt diligently. Number 4, what does that mean? Prompting our stakeholders. So we need to guide our stakeholders in the direction that we want to get us the information that we need, to encourage them to talk more or less. So how do we encourage stakeholders to talk? We can be direct. Can you be more specific? We can assume that there's more. We can take that position in the workshop. And whatever they say they're talking about the requirement, they finish, they're quiet now. We can just assume there's more and say, what else? Or they're talking about their job. What else? And that presumes that there's more. And that's usually enough to get somebody to start talking more. Empathy. I can see how that's difficult. That's all you need to say. And nonverbal, nodding your head. I like that one, nonverbal. And saying their name for the 85% of multitaskers. If you are in a meeting of 10 people and you're having trouble getting information from them, you can just start saying their name and directing the question to that person. And a combination of techniques as well. Another one is to repeat their statement, but as a question. So if somebody says, the current system doesn't have any reports, you can ask, the current system doesn't have any reports? And then let them talk. You can also match them, recognizing their tone. We talked already about how important it is to have the right tone. And if they're upset about the system functionality, or they're upset about the situation, the current system doesn't have any reports. The current system doesn't have any reports. Match their tone. Okay? It shows empathy. It builds relationships. It shows trust. It shows that you care about their issues. And a very famous one for all of us is the 5 whys. That's right out of our business analysis book of knowledge. Why is that? Oh, why did that happen? Oh, why is that? Down to the 5th level. And silence as a strategy. If I'm talking, then they aren't. And the whole point of the workshop is actually to get them to talk. So I love using silence as a strategy. I'm really the quietest person in the room. And people might get a little bit uncomfortable. They might start fidgeting a little bit, but then they start filling me up with information, because people by nature, they don't like the empty air, which is terrific for us to get information from stakeholders. Has anybody used any of these techniques? Somebody must have used at least one of them.
Yeah, 5 whys. Repeat their question. Statement as a question. Yeah. these are the common ones, I would say, for me.
What about on this other page? Have you used any of those?
Yeah, nonverbal and empathy, I would say, and direct as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so quite a few.
Yeah, I think same here, Pam. I think I've used most of them. But I do have a question for you in terms of inclusive, being inclusive with the stakeholders. Is there an opportunity in there that will drive more participation too? And what might be some of those examples?
And when you say inclusive, can you be more specific?
In a workshop, you may have people who, and I'm just making it up right now, but like people who flew in from various parts of US to be together, or from Canada, or from, somebody's flown in from India.
Mhm.
And it's a congregation of people coming from different backgrounds, culture, time zones, and whatnot. And so everyone's got their beliefs of being introvert, extrovert, and whatnot as well. How do you, encourage participation, because not everyone's the same in the room? If it was a steady state, these set of options that you have, those work brilliantly. But then in a setting where people may feel a little out of place and not open to, even though they may want to engage, may not be able to engage as much. So that's kind of what I was meaning there.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. It's interesting because I do a lot of speaking in Europe as well, and Europeans, they tell me, we're not very vocal and verbal and asking questions like American audiences. That's not really our style. And I thought it was an interesting comment, because I didn't realize that they felt that over in Canada, North America, that we were a particularly vocal bunch. But I would say it's in setting the tone and having small groups. I'm really in favor of small stakeholder workshops. And sometimes we can't avoid that. I mean, sometimes we do get the workshops that are 50 people, but setting the tone is really, really important. So at the beginning of this session, I made it really clear that I hoped that people would come off mute and participate and ask questions and comment, and they are, right? And that's a very, very good technique. So if you are having a workshop and you have people from different cultures, and we really want to set the tone, and we want to set the framework for what is acceptable and what is even encouraged. And I think that that's a really, really important technique. And some of the things that I've done in the past is, I'll give just one very simple story, is when I was leading a UAT session of lessons learned. And I knew that the testers were really nervous about saying anything bad about the system, because they felt that it would be critical. They felt that they would be, saying mean things. And their colleagues in the developer, they actually created the system. So they didn't even want to say anything bad about their colleagues. I knew this in advance. And I guess that's another thing to learn about, is what can you learn in advance? I knew that this was going to be a problem. I knew that probably my meeting, it was going to be very flat and very short, because they didn't want to criticize. And we say criticize in quotes. So what I did when I was beginning the workshop is I said, this is one of those rare opportunities in life where you're being paid to complain. And the more that you complain, the happier you're going to make me. So I really hope you take advantage of this opportunity to complain. Of course, everybody started laughing. And then I started it off by talking about the things in the system that I didn't like. And so that really opened the door through a leadership kind of way for them to start talking about the things that they didn't like. And then we had a really productive session. So set the tone. So it's the first thing that we talked about tonight, is setting that tone. Okay?
Hi, can I say something?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask or clarify if we can categorize all of these techniques under like active listening, because like when you're having a conversation with a group of stakeholders, I think being empathetic, nodding, and calling their names is part of active listening. Is it like an umbrella word for these techniques, or active listening it's a technique on its own?
So I love that you brought the term active listening into the conversation, because I think I would put it under active listening, but I think it's such a broad term that I think a lot of people couldn't nail it like that. But I really like that classification, active listening. A business analyst would call it elicitation techniques. Okay. So what happens if stakeholders talk too much? What can we do? We love it when stakeholders give us information. I mean, it's really great, but sometimes we really need to move the meeting on, right? So in my estimation, we have a few different options. We can interrupt them with a compliment. And this is what that looks like. Let's say my stakeholder, Ralph, is talking. He made his point, I documented it, and he keeps talking because he's super excited about the topic. But it's time to move the meeting forward. So here's what I say to Ralph. Ralph, you made an excellent point about how the system lacks important auditing features, and it reminds me that we haven't yet talked about reporting. And then I transition. Okay? So interrupt with a compliment. And it's funny, when I did this workshop in Paris in the summer, and we had a number of different tables participating, and one person would be talking nonstop, and then the other person would try to interject and interrupt with a compliment. In some cases, the person who was talking didn't even know that they were being interrupted. They just like, oh, this compliment. So that's a very nice and easy technique to redirect the stakeholder, is interrupt with a compliment. Another technique would be, we can summarize their point, thank them, and then transition. Okay? And we can also just put some items in the parking lot to discuss later. And sometimes we have to do that. If it's a very complex, meaty topic, and there's no way we're going to get through the meeting, we can legitimately say, we'll put some items in the parking lot. And I find that people don't mind being interrupted if they know it's coming. And that's going to be in your beginning, your script is what I call it. In the beginning of your meeting, in your script, if you mention that, if you say, if we get off track, I'm going to put some items in the parking lot. I hope you're okay with that. And you're getting their consent to do that, their permission to do that. And then when it happens in the meeting, there's not that uncomfortableness because they knew it was coming. Okay? So there's a lot to be said for setting up your meeting in the way that you want it to run, down to that kind of level. Any other techniques that anybody else has come up with for if stakeholders talk too much? I'd be interested in hearing that.
I've got two. One is asking for others' inputs. So if somebody is talking about, and I'm just making it up again, let's say Microsoft technologies, and they're passionate about that and whatnot, asking for others' inputs at that point in time to say, this is great, but can we have others chime in as well on this? That's one way to balance out the situation. And then the second one is following up offline. So if they have more to say than what the time available is in the meeting, it's always used. I think you probably said that in terms of parking lot, but I think following up offline is another way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Parking lot, offline. Yeah. And I think it's a very good tip, Sid, to get other people involved in the discussion. I like that one. Anybody else? It feels a little bit odd when you start doing it, but then you get used to the technique and you get to be quite good at it. So the last, number 5, is get to know your stakeholders. You can have all of the best techniques in the world, and none of them will be a substitute for actually getting to know your stakeholders. This image here is generated from AI, and I gave this same presentation to Argentina earlier in the week, and somebody was writing in the chat, they look like they are the oh, what did they say? Not the devil, but they said they look like vampires. Their eyes. So so you get to see the vampires as well. So if you get to know your stakeholders, you get to know information that allows them to perform their best. What time? You know, I had one stakeholder who said, I will meet you at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9, 10, but I will not meet you at 1 p.m. or later because my brain is mush. So please don't do meetings in the afternoon. And this is, you know, I want the best information from that person. So I'm going to change into their preferences. If they want to meet by teams, they want to meet in person, they want to meet small groups, large groups. I mean, I always favor small groups, actually. I never, unless it's a push communication where I'm not looking for input, large groups are okay. But otherwise, small groups every time is how I try to do it. And breaking up stakeholders into logical ways, maybe by functions, who knows it, or departments, but a logical grouping of stakeholders. And knowing if they're verbal or visual. If somebody is verbal, I find that they actually are more verbal but if you have verbal and visual together in your communication, that's fantastic. If you know information about what their busiest time is at work, so you can arrange a different time to meet or get their feedback, or even from somebody else. So getting to know your stakeholders will be your number 1 success factor at work. Your number 1. And how do you get to know them? Well, you can ask them. That's the easiest thing to do. You can ask them what their working preferences are. You can go to coffee with them. You can also make some pretty good guesstimates based on the job that they do. So what personalities do we assign to accountants versus sales? Okay. Introverted versus extroverted, quiet versus talkative. It's a starting point. It's not always the case. It's not everything, but it's a starting point. And asking other people about them as well. Asking our project manager, our colleagues, have you worked with this person before? What do they like? What do they prefer? All these kinds of things. We can Google them. There's lots of different ways to get to know our stakeholders. And it all begins with asking them. So a summary is setting the mood and tone with your stakeholders. Structure smartly to guide their focus. Be visual and appeal to how they absorb information, verbally and visually at a minimum. Prompt diligently to encourage or discourage discussion, and get to know your stakeholders. So you don't have to walk that tightrope alone, and you can walk with your stakeholders instead. So feel free, please, to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any further questions or you'd like to connect. Happy to connect with anybody on this call. And I am also, I can also answer any other questions that you might have about this topic. Or comments. If you have wonderful ways to get stakeholders to talk or not talk, silence, Yeah, please share.
Yeah. Hi, Pamela.
Hello.
Yeah. So, when you were talking about getting to know stakeholders, something that came to my mind is basically, adopting the continuous improvement strategy, and not like, getting this information and just working with that all through. One way I also do it is, as I continue to engage with the stakeholders, lessons learned are picked up, and I sort of reinvent how I work with the stakeholders based on what I see, based on what I observe, and also based on what I tell them. So it's just something I just wanted to say, just to see what your thoughts are on how that also works with getting to know your stakeholders and building a great relationship with them.
Love it, love it, love it. Using continuous improvement techniques to improve stakeholder dialogue and silence and managing stakeholders. Love it, because you are really engaging in a lot of mitigation. You know what worked before or what didn't work, and you're doing that at the front end of your project to make sure it doesn't happen again or it improves. So that's a wonderful technique. That's something that I really like. Anyone else?
I think like another thing I have noticed is sometimes in a meeting there might be people from different hierarchy levels in an organization, an individual contributor or a manager or a senior manager, and then people shy from talking, these individual contributors, if they see their senior managers in that meeting. So probably a better thing to do is have a separate meeting for those managers or senior managers, and then another one for individual contributors, and have one spokesperson who is representing those individual contributors and bring them into that meeting with the managers or senior managers or other director level folks.
I think that's a very good idea, Palav, to have senior managers in a different meeting. And it's something that I often do as well, because I find that senior managers are going to be more candid if I'm in a meeting alone with them and not in front of their subordinates.
Yeah.
There might be some reason why you want a senior manager in the same meeting as some other, maybe to provide support for your initiative, something like that. But I generally also try to separate them so that both groups can feel more comfortable in discussing their thoughts and their business needs. Good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I think we have reached the end of the session here. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight remotely. It's amazing. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for the wonderful session today. If I may redirect your guys' attention back to the slides, 1 second. Let me pull them up here. It's loading. Here we go. So we just finished the Q&A, and now I'd like to move on to the chapter news. There is a shift in search of excellence requirements in-person workshop at Simon Fraser University on October 17th this year, 9 a.m. and October 18th at 4 p.m. So please make sure to check that out if you're interested. I think that would be wonderful for you all.
Sorry, Adit, I think there is a typo in there. So It will run for 2 days from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. each day.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, as Pallav just said, it's 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. both days, 17th of October and 18th of October. So please make sure to check that out if you're interested. And I think that brings us to the end of this session. Again, big thank you to our guest speaker today, Pamela, for the wonderful, wonderful session. And thank you all for showing up. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, Pamela, once again, and thank you to all the volunteers and sponsors for making this session possible for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
You